So today I'll be talking to Erica Bigelow, who is a life coach, and she works with clients to find their balance in all areas of their life. And I thought it was particularly interesting in this conversation how she discusses using her intuition when she was just 5 years old. And this moment when she was 5 years old prevented her from being abducted from a shopping mall. And she talks about how she recognized from this moment how vital listening to our real feelings can be. And it can be the difference between life and death. I mean, how often do we push our feelings aside so that we can take instruction from some other people in our lives? This notion of living outside of our real feelings, I believe, is what is contributing to the mass amount of disease and illness in the world these days. Because when you separate yourself from who you really want to be, you are not happy. And then in turn, you can't really be good for the other people in your life. You get moody and grouchy and not giving the way that you would if you were really being happy with yourself. So in this discussion, we go on to talk about how we have to fill up our own battery if we want to be there for others. And it is our right to do so, to fill up our own battery. Okay, so one of the things I thought was really interesting when we spoke the other day is you were saying that you used to get panic attacks. So could I ask you, what was that like and how did you overcome those panic attacks?
So, the panic attacks came across for a lot of different things. I had, like I mentioned before, I have a hyperthyroidism. So when my hyperthyroidism is overactive, everything is already anxious. But also, I had some healing that needed to be done that would just add on to them to have them more often or more frequently. And at first, before I even knew what they were, I would be driving and all of a sudden just feel like I'm going to pass out or like need to go on the side of the road because I didn't know, like, is it going to just be like something that I feel anxious about, or am I going to actually get to the point of passing out because it got that bad. So it was pretty traumatic until I started putting together like, oh, these are actual panic attacks and they're coming from something.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Because
So
before having them, honestly, sorry to cut you off, is I thought it was more of like a mind over matter thing. Like if you feel yourself going on them, kind of like talk yourself down, but medically and also a little bit more it's a little more complex than that once I actually experienced them myself.
right, okay. So what was it underneath it all?
So clearly I had, childhood traumas and wounds that needed to be addressed that I never got around to. And little things like I mentioned to you when we first met is like I had these feelings like something isn't quite right? But I just couldn't pinpoint them until I started to learn how to be more mindful and aware of triggers or what's causing these memories. So simple things like listening to certain songs or smells would take me back to childhood traumas that I didn't know were actual childhood traumas that were causing an issue.
So how did you get over that or overcome that situation?
Um, so actually starting to do my self-care and my self-love healing of really getting down to the nitty-gritty of who I was, with all of the baggage that came along with that, the good and the bad. Like I like to call it the A side and the B side that we all have. Um, so really started to getting more in tune with who I was and really enjoying that person and loving that person. And so once I, started to declutter all of the chaos that kind of over the years has just piled up, I got to being more self-aware and started to be more mindful like, okay, so I'm upset, but upset about what? And then trying to pinpoint where things came from or why all of a sudden, you know, type of thing. And that came with just that it's it sounds simple, but it's such a complex, process that it's just part of that journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so yeah, so you were working through stuff bit by bit. And you also talked a little bit about, which I think is really interesting. Last time you mentioned about your intuition, which I thought was a really interesting thing. And you said how you were in a mall as a child and you were nearly abducted, and you kind of recognized that your intuition was really important there because you you really didn't know how you kind of got out of that situation.
Yeah. So clearly at 5, you can feel, but you don't put or have the actual words
Mm.
or, articulate what's happening. So I just always had this intuition of like, if something was right or wrong. I didn't know how deep that right or wrong meant, but I just knew that something didn't fit or wasn't right there that I needed to explore a little bit more, like you mentioned. Yeah, I was almost abducted at 5, just knowing instinctually, immediately, like you need to do something or this will be the end.
Wow.
And like I mentioned to you, yeah, if the security and the police said if there was any lack of non-responsiveness fast enough, I probably wouldn't be here to talk
Could you
to.
explain that situation a little bit? Like what
Yeah,
happened?
so I was at the mall with my godmom, and we were in Macy's, and you know how they have those roundabout clothing where the clothing is around all the way around. And I
Yep.
was 5, so it was short. And so I was on one end and she was on the other, but maybe two of them down now that I'm thinking about it. And I'm just looking through clothes, and someone came from behind me and swiped me up.
So they literally picked you up.
Put me over their shoulder and started to run. And at that point, that's when I started to scream for my godparent at that time and was like, please get me.
Wow. And so what happened at that moment?
So then at that point, the security guard and her tackled the guy right before getting to the front door and pretty basically rescued me.
Wow, that's incredible. And yeah, so they told you some more details about the situation later, or?
No, the weirdest thing is it's almost like it happened yesterday. It's pretty weird. But it's
Okay.
very, very vivid, very clear. Like what those are one of the memories that I can't kind of shake.
And you really felt at that time that like you had that feeling like, even though you were so young, that your intuition was like key there in getting you out of that
Hmm.
situation.
Absolutely. There's, I feel like everybody has intuition. It's just how aware of it and how much you're willing to listen. Everybody gets those gut feelings like, I don't know if this is where I should be going or if I should be talking to this person because there's just something just doesn't feel right. And those don't feel right need to be explored more because typically 99% of the time they're right.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because I mean, obviously we're both aware of the fact that in society today, most of the time we're told not to, we're just told, oh, this is what you should do about almost everything, and so we don't really think about, listening inside anymore.
Right. That's where the disconnect comes because
Yeah.
we're just programmed to listen to what people say to do versus who your true self is and what that sounds like for you.
And I'm also really interested in your thoughts about the whole idea because we've been talking about, you experienced the panic and stuff like that. And, obviously intuition, panic, things coming up from your past. I kind of feel like that's part of it. The disconnect that people are having in terms of listening to external things rather
Mm-hmm.
than listening to their internal feelings, separates you bit by bit more and more. So
Mm-hmm.
you get to the point where you don't even know how to feel good. Like some people don't know what they want at all because they spend so much time listening to other people tell them what they should do.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I feel like people get in a place of just frustration because they feel like, listen, I'm the cookie cutter. I have this awesome job. I'm successful. I have all these degrees,
Yep.
but that's not who they want to be. But they don't know that because they've been conditioned, like you said, or programmed to think that this is the way it's supposed to look and this is how it should look, you
Mm.
know? So, yes, I feel like, but So this is the thing. When I was growing up, it was if as if I was like a rebel, or I was always going against what was right.
Mm,
But now looking it back as an adult, and my purpose or my calling was to question these things that weren't right or
mm,
wasn't the right way to go. We were just doing it because that's what we were told to do, or that's what generations prior have done,
mm.
which I think that's really why society is so lost, because we're told to think more and feel less. But that's not humans. We're human beings. We need to feel. It's a necessity to have true love and to really feel who you are and feel those feelings, because the more we suppress them, the more lost we get and less connected.
Yeah, and look, a lot of listeners to my channel are kind of interested in, how do you get over things like you said before, panic and anxiety and depression, things like that. So what do you think in terms of using your intuition to be able to overcome those sorts of conditions?
So that's the thing, is I think that first, a lot of times people don't even realize what the mind has suppressed is causing or showing up in their lives, and why they're stuck in the same cycle, you know? So I think it's the finding and getting that clarity first, that there might be something here
Yeah,
to
yeah,
even explore. So that's a hard one for people to even grasp, because it's like telling a drug addict you need to get help when they don't see anything wrong. So the first thing is pinpointing that there is a source to this, the anxiety or the panic attacks or the depression.
right.
That doesn't You're not born that way. We are not depression. Your name is um, Chris, but you're not depression. Even if you
Yeah,
have depression, that doesn't define who you are. Does
yeah,
that make sense?
yeah,
So you can always change it. That's just a mindset. That's something that can always be changed.
yeah.
So it's not in our DNA to be depressed, but also what has life thrown at us? What has the circumstances that we've been placed in, and how have we dealt with those circumstances? That then will put you into depression or those panic attacks or that anxiety.
Right,
But
right.
if you don't even know what the source is to fix, it's kind of like you go to the doctor, they're like, oh, you're depressed, here's some medication. But for me, that's just a band-aid. You're not actually getting to the core issue. That's not.
Yeah. And so many people talk about, they might have various different conditions, emotional conditions, and they will say things like, "Oh, doctor told me I've got this, and I've got to take these pills, and I never knew that's why I was so, like I was like this." So for me, it kind of feels like very detached the way people talk about it. Like they know that they don't feel right, but they just say, "Well, this is the condition, and this is just a condition, and that's it." So I've always felt a bit disturbed by that, because I'm thinking like, well, where's my self choice in the matter?
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a funny issue.
Yeah. So just like, let's think about cancer. We can find where the source came from. We don't just wake up and say, oh, you have cancer, you're cancer. No, it doesn't work like that. You can say you got a lump under your arm, it started there, and then it ended up spreading. So the same thing with the depression or that self-doubting talk or not feeling worthy enough, that came from somewhere, but where? So that way you can go back to that place, allow yourself to have those emotions, deal with them properly, and then move forward. Because just putting medication in your mouth is just simply just rolling over a rug with all of this stuff under it that has not been addressed. So it doesn't matter how many pills you take, you're not getting to the core and actually doing what you need to do to heal properly.
And what if you don't know what how it started?
It doesn't take me, um, I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but I can talk to somebody within that first 30 minutes that I give them at least, or if not that time, the time before, to tell someone exactly what's going on. It's a lot of the time from childhood traumas, or abandonment issues, codependency due to lack of parenting. Again,
Yep.
but that's not parents' fault. That's just lack of education or knowing what needs to be changed.
Right. Okay. Okay. So you're able to work with people and really kind of get into that, where it came from, and then how do you get that to dissolve?
So basically, you have to sit in it. You have to let yourself heal. Because what people usually do, let's say something bad happens, our minds are so awesome so that we can continue to live, it kind of just shoves it in a storage and slams the door, and you kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
The mind doesn't forget, it just goes in our subconscious and it shows up in different parts of our lives. Whether that be you a people pleaser because you feel not worthy enough, so you have to overexert yourself, which then will give you those panic attacks and anxiety because you're over giving out stuff that you don't even have to give. So you're overdoing it and you're always in this go, go, go mode, and you're never allowing yourself to relax.
Yeah,
So
because
then
you
the
feel
body
like
just
you
won't go
have to
into,
give so much because you feel so
yeah,
depleted.
because you need that validation and that approval that was never given to you as a child. So
Yeah.
now as an adult, it's something we still need, hasn't been addressed, but now this is the way it's showing up in your adult life.
Right, right. And so how do those things end up being conditions in terms of like diseases and stuff like that?
Just because of life, the way you grew up, things, simple things. So people think trauma has to be this traumatic, huge story. It doesn't have to be even that big. Simple things of like a baby going up to her mom at 6 or 7, wanting to show her a picture, but the mom is so overwhelmed, chaos, single mom, kind of just shrugs the baby away. That automatically tells the baby, you're not worthy enough, you're not good enough. So that's just one of the traumas. Then they go to school and they don't get the best grades, or kids are mean or talk about them, or you're stupid on the playground. That's another trauma that gets on top of that. So that starts
Mm.
building that self-doubting and that I am not good enough, because I continuously hear this in different aspects of my life. So clearly I am what they're saying I am, versus having the mindset of like, okay, this has happened, but I am worthy and I am good enough.
Okay, so I wanted to go to this next part.
Okay.
And you said in our pre-chat, you said that having a son changed your life. How did that change your life?
Um, Actually, for the first time, understanding and feeling what unconditional love felt like.
Right.
So having that and knowing that it exists. So when I say unconditional love, there's layers to love, right? So finding that deepest place of pure, no conditions, no intentions, nothing really with it, but just that genuine, pure love
Mm.
was definitely eye-opening for me.
Okay, so and before then, how did you feel about everything?
Um, I wouldn't say sheltered. I think the word would be not knowing.
Not knowing.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. And so how did that change your perspective in life and also what drives you and that sort of thing?
It made me want to be more compassionate and kind to myself and actually know what unconditional love felt like for me to give it to myself.
Right. Okay. So that helped you kind of realize that, like how much you were lacking in your own like
Yeah.
self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, but it's almost like having always eating New York steaks and never having a filet mignon. You don't know
Yep.
what's missing until you're like, oh, this is a thing. This is a real thing. So it gave me hope, something to look forward to.
Yeah, and I think that happens with a lot of people in terms of, that they kind of roam through life just thinking, well, this is the way it is, and then of course we have addictions where people will just drink or smoke or eat a lot of food or whatever it is to just kind of go, well, life is just life, and it doesn't feel that great all the time, but I can get some kind of cheap thrills here and there. So you're saying this really brought you to another level.
Yeah. Hmm. Absolutely. And so that's what really started me on my journey of being wanting to change my mindset and being more positive and really living and loving life and not just surviving.
And what can people, because a lot, as we've just said, a lot of people would just kind of just cruise through life and think, well, there's nothing else really to it. Like nobody's happy all the time. So what is it that people can feel? Like how deep can their feelings go? How much, I don't want to use the word should, but how much should people be feeling joy in their life? Like some people, some gurus you hear, they're just like, oh, every day is just amazing, and it's kind of hard to kind of feel that. But where are we? What are we missing in our lives?
So clearly, life is still life. That's not going to change. It's just, I think, the way you start to see things and the way you view hardship. Every day is not peaches and roses and rainbows and things like that. But what I've learned to do is, even if it is one of those days where you don't want to go or you don't want to move, I still pick myself up and try to be the best person that I can be, because there is someone that needs me or to talk to me or needs me to be around for them. So that's
Right.
what makes me happy. That's what keeps me going. And even on those days when I don't want to work, or I don't even call it work, do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
As soon as I get on the call, I'm like, yes, I'm up, so I think what helps people get to that is truly finding who their true selves are, living there and loving that person, because then everything else kind of just works in that favor, because the good energy starts from inside. So if you're coming from a good place, that's what you're projecting, and then that's what you receive. So it's just like an ongoing, constant reminders of, yes, life is amazing. These are beautiful things.
Yeah. Okay. Really interesting.
Did that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I just remember a Dr. Phil episode many, many years ago. He's not on TV anymore, but I remember Dr. Phil saying, he goes, I want you to be excited about your life, and and I always remember that. I was thinking, like that, all these people on this stage were just like really depressed, and he was reminding them basically that, you got to be excited about your life. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that a lot of people are missing. So yeah, what you're saying definitely makes sense. It's just sometimes I think it's hard for some people to be able to kind of figure out what that is, because we're so used to just, we'll do a bit of this, bit of that. And in the end of the day, we all get sick of, we find enjoyment, then we get tired of it, and then we get bored. That can be like a general cycle for a lot of people. So I think finding that extra motivation or something that people can live for is really important.
You just said it. So it's not just what everyone's saying for you to do. That's why it's so important for people to find that true self and love that, because your true self has all these amazing things that it can do when you cherish it and nourish it. And, I come up with new ideas every day, and each idea I'm even more and more excited, because these are things that I enjoy, I like, but they're things that I like, not what everybody told me that I like.
Right. Okay. So can you give me some examples of that, those things that bring you more and more joy?
So when I first started my journey of the life coaching, again, clearly throughout my journey, my seat has always been in situations where I've been leaders or an advisor in some kind of shape or form. But starting the journey, I thought, like, I'm going to be a life coach, one-on-one coaching. But as I'm sitting here and I'm excited and I'm like, this is my purpose, I love it, more and more doors are opening that I never first thought would happen. First of all, I have a podcast. I never wanted to do this type of thing because I don't want to be on film. I wanted to just do the one-on-one coaching, but got into this and I'm like, oh my God, this is another thing. I love it. And then people are like, do you want to be guest on my show? And I'm like, yeah, another thing. And then people are like, we can have you come to our office and do motivational speeches for work. And I'm like, yeah, another thing. So it's just like, when you sit in that space, it gives you that opportunity to be like, oh, these are things that I'm really good at without even thinking about it and didn't even know, So it's just, it's a constant. What I give out is what comes back. It's just, I hate to say the universe because I'm more spiritual than that, but it really is. It's the energy you place out, what comes back.
So yeah, so okay, so you don't like using the word universe. What word would you use to
Spiritual.
encompass
So I'm
everything?
very spiritual. I believe in God. That's my thing. He walks with me every day. That's why I'm here. What I'm doing
Yep.
it for is to serve. Um, so I don't say universe because I say it as like a spirit, like a Holy Spirit. I'm asking for him to deliver of what he's asking of me.
Yep.
Have surrendered, decided to just like really let go and just put it out there, have the doors open. And when I say I put it out there and the doors are slamming open, it's like, where have
Wow.
you been? We've been waiting for you.
So that's a really interesting idea. Like another thing I think people really struggle with is believing that they can say, "I want this," and it actually happening for them. Because a lot of people feel like life is random. You know, they'll be like, "Well, who am I to be able to say that I want this to happen for me?"
Right. Exactly. And honestly, I'm a human too. I struggled with that as well. So, but once I started to really humble myself and say, you know what? Everyone has a purpose. And if this is my truth and this is where I'm supposed to go, you'll continue to open the doors. If it's not for me, then you'll shut the doors. And I know that I need to go a different road and just be humble, because everything I do is not going to be perfect and everything I do may fail or may not, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to pick myself up and try another road.
Yeah, yeah. And also it reminds me of that I saw an article about Ellen years ago, and she was saying how, like, when she came out, right, she, like, all the work stopped, and she was like, "Oh man, maybe I've made a huge mistake," because obviously coming out in Hollywood back then was
It was
probably a big
huge.
issue.
Right.
And then she said, it only took a few months, and then it all started to change for her. So she had to go through that period of like, didn't know if she'd thrown her whole career away, kind of thing. So yeah, when you're talking, it kind of reminded me of that in terms of like, you have to kind of go, well, this is me, and I'm just going to have to, like, boom, go into it, and then if doors open, great. If they don't, well, I guess I'll do something else.
Exactly. And I really did that. I had a full time job that was paying very well. But if I didn't take these steps, I wouldn't have been here and I would have not known where I could have where I'm going and
Yeah.
where I'm going to continue to go.
Yeah, and I just want to mention something else that we talked about. Okay, so yeah, so a lot of people, as I keep mentioning, they'll build their life from the outside in. But you said what you really value is surrender. You used that word a few times, surrender. So
Mhm.
could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, as humans, we want to be in control of everything. We want to know this is what it's going to look like in 2 months, 6 months, 3 years, 5 years. But the truth is we don't know. We don't even know if we will be here tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
so I had learned to learn like today is today, and I need to surrender and be the best person I can be today. And I'll worry about tomorrow, with knowing that I have financial bills that need to be done. I need to take care of real life things, but also trusting the process, and that comes with allowing yourself to surrender, be the best person that you can be. And what I have learned with surrendering is I freed up all of that stress and that worry of the day to day. How is tomorrow going to happen? What's the next week going to look like? And I have allowed myself to be more present, and that means more productive, getting more things done because I'm just worried and focused about today and not the thousand things I have to do.
Yeah, okay, excellent. And also you mentioned a little bit about guided meditations, and obviously you're
Mm-hmm.
probably aware that on my channel I do a lot of guided meditations. So
Nice.
could you talk about some of your use with guided meditations and that sort of thing?
I love it. It's the best thing ever. And I advise it to all of my clients. I have clients from 16 to 50. And every last one of them I advise it to because for me, the guided meditation helps that calming of your brain. Even for me, I'm healing. I'm going to always be healing, but I still need that guided meditation because sometimes we can be on overload. Just, that day was heavy. My client list was heavy, or their stories were heavy. And I don't want to be emotionally connected to everything so that it just keeps carrying on with me. And I kind of like letting it go. And so that's what I use the guided meditation for, to kind of like get a clean slate and start fresh the next day.
Okay, great. And lastly, I just want to ask you, what is your routine? How do you, so what is like, I suppose, a principle or your daily routine that you go from to help your clients and also to help you keep yourself guided in the right way?
Balanced. Every morning I clearly have to get my son ready, get him off to school. But then the next thing is me. I'm always first. Because if I'm not taken care of and my battery is not on 100, I have nothing to give anybody. So I wake up, I will go for a jog or a nice run. And then I do the guided meditation. I do anything from like 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how heavy the day was prior or how heavy my day is going to look like moving forward. And then a nice little breakfast. And then I have my first client or podcast, whatever that day looks like.
Wow. And so I just latched onto something there. So you were saying, fill your own battery first.
Have to.
And that's interesting, because a lot of people will be like, but I give so much. I'm always giving to other people and people don't care about me. So then they say, well, stuff other people because you're like, I give back to them. So you're saying fill yourself up first before you can, I suppose, give to other people.
Well, the same thing like your phone. Your battery's charging all night long. You're allowing your battery to be full so that morning comes, that battery is on 100 for the day. If you forgot to charge it, the phone's going to die throughout the day because it doesn't have enough energy to get you through that 8 hours.
And if someone does feel as though their battery is really empty and they keep giving out and they're not getting anything back, so what should they do? They need to go and find, I guess, get in touch with their feelings.
Yeah, so they need to start paying attention. And that's where that guided meditation helps people being mindful and aware. What's going on? Where's the drainage coming from? Is it work, life, baggage that hasn't been cleared out? Where is that draining coming from? And so you need to start sorting it out through that way, trying to figure out where the drainage is coming from. And then if it happens to be family, husband, spouse, kids, start setting boundaries so that you minimize how much that drainage happens moving forward. Because if you are trying to get in a different space, but you're not changing anything, you're just going to be running your wheels and not getting anywhere.
Right. So yourself is the most important thing. Take care of yourself first, and then you can spread your love around to other people.
Yeah. So the way that was for me is when I had my son, we were on a plane. And the flight attendant said, if we go down, make sure you put his mask on, your mask on first, and then your son. And I was like, no way. There's no way. Like, my kid has to be safe. And the lady was like, well, if you pass out, then who will take care of your son?
That's a really, really interesting story. That's amazing.
So, and I was like, wow, that one for me clearly was just that situation. But on that flight, I thought about that really intensely. Like, wow. Yeah. What kind of mom am I if I'm a negative Nancy all the time? What kind of mom am I if I'm yelling because I'm under so much stress because I'm not taking care of myself properly, or checking in with who I am, or loving everything about myself? It just, without us being on 100 and actually truly loving ourselves, we can't be there for no one. We can't show the same type of compassion. We can't show the same kind of kindness or love because we don't even know what it feels like for ourselves.
So I was talking with Erica Bigelow, and it's hard to remember these ideas, but they're worth remembering. So I'll just recap very briefly. Remember to use your intuition. It is the knowing part of you, and it knows what is right for you. And the second part was fill up your own battery before thinking about anyone else. That means find a way to have your needs met so that you can actually be truthfully giving to others around you, because it's impossible to fake that stuff. So when you do get that stuff for yourself, you can naturally give more to others without even trying. And once again, if you have any comments or questions about this podcast, please feel free to write it below in the description panel. I'd love to hear your questions and ideas.